Hello, it's Caitlin on the Busy Writers Live YouTube channel, and before I start and announce what this video is, which you pretty much already know since the title, I am wearing a very goofy shirt. It's actually a sweatshirt backwards, but it has my school's name on the back. I'm not interested in internet stalkers coming out to find out where I live, so you get to watch this video with my sweatshirt on backwards. But just know it is on purpose, so I'm not that crazy. Okay. So this video is, of course, what is in the first chapter, which can be really hard, if not the hardest part of the book to write, because there is so much pressure. You hear this from other writers, you hear it from other readers, just everywhere, where this is the most important part. There's the hook, and that is sometimes that 1 to 2 to even 3 sentences long hook is a lot of pressure. And then the whole chapter is what your readers introduce. It's the first introduction you have. You're introducing your baby to your reader, so that way he'll buy it. That's a bad metaphor. Okay, you're introducing your book to your reader. It's a first impression. It determines whether or not they're going to throw cash at you in exchange for your book, which is kind of daunting sometimes. And a lot of writers often get stuck with this. They'll spend weeks or months on it, and if they spend too much time on it, they'll give up and just say, well, if every chapter is like this, screw it. Well, here's the thing. Not every chapter is like it, so here are a few things that you should know about what is in the first chapter. First, what is inside the chapter? In the first chapter, what the priorities you need to have when you're thinking about what to put in your first chapter is you need to have an event that shoots everything off, which my first draft I actually did not have. There was a big murder scene in my first draft, but I had to add that in my re-edit because I didn't have an event that actually shot everything off, that actually got my character asking, what in the world is going on? So there needs to be an event that actually shoots things off, and it needs to be something that isn't seen every other day or doesn't happen every other day. I mean, you don't see a woman's head cut in half, almost cut off, on the sidewalk when you're walking home from school every day. I hope if your life is that way, I'm very sorry. So that's something. It needs to have a cliffhanger, especially at the end, but it needs to be not full, but there needs to be a couple cliffhangers to where the reader needs to be asking questions. They need to be interacting already. And of course, a cliffhanger at the end so that they will read the second chapter. And of course, on Amazon, the first 3 chapters you can read for free, so my biggest cliffhanger needs to be at the end of the 3rd chapter, not necessarily the first, so that way they'll buy my stuff. In the first chapter, you also are promising the reader a lot of stuff. Your regular style of writing needs to be there, and your tone, and your point of view, and you need to know who the main character is. These are a bunch of promises you're giving the reader, and if you change it in the middle, they're not going to buy your next one, because you broke your promise. And they also learn from the first chapter whether or not they like to read your style of writing, which can affect different readers in different ways. They might like the genre, but they don't like the style that you're writing in, and they won't read it. Something that should not be in your first chapter, or definitely should not be a priority, that you probably hear that should be, is backstories. Oh my goodness, your reader doesn't care yet, okay? They're just trying to see if they like the book. They care about the backstories later, so that should come piece by piece later. You can even put backstories in the prologue if you want to. It doesn't belong in the first chapter. Something that is kind of cliche and a little bit on the annoying side. Wow, my face is so bright. Okay, sorry. And kind of on the annoying side is that if your book starts with a dream or a vision, this will confuse the readers, especially if it's the first book. This can be different if you're in a series and it isn't the first book of the series. Then your readers kind of know who the main character is. They kind of know who the antagonist is. They know a little bit what's going on, what happened before. So if it's a dream, that won't confuse them as much. But if it's the first book, or if it's a standalone book and you're trying to put a dream in the first, that's the first thing that happens, no, that's going to confuse them like heck. They don't know anything about your book yet. They don't even know your main character's name. Unless you put it on the back, then maybe they will. You get my point. So now that's what's in and what's not. When it gets too hard, you need to either just put something down, or you can even put it on hold. Sometimes things like that just come later, just like your title. It will eventually come to you. It will all come into peace. The first few chapters is always really hard for me because I actually most of the time don't even know how my own stories start. And they just end when I feel like it, kind of. Which is why I usually write in the dark instead of outlining, which is not a good idea if you're not good at what you do and not experienced. But the good thing about just putting something down or even putting it on hold is you're going to come back to it to begin with. I mean, you should be coming back to it like 10 different times. You should be able to memorize all your chapters and what happens in them by the time you're done with your book. So it's not important that you have everything down on your first or even your second or third or fourth draft. You can also ask for feedback. And you can ask your critique partners, your beta readers, because this is their job. And you need to ask them to be specific. The other thing you need to do is trust your gut, okay? Usually you kind of know what's right for your baby. And of course the feedback will tell you whether your gut's wrong or not. And something that I fell into the trap of, and that I paid for it later, big time, is I tried too hard. The pressure got to me, and I started scrambling words on there that were big words that sounded right to me, but just confused the heck out of my readers. And my sentences were kind of off, and they sounded mystical to me and sounded right, like, wow, they're going to think my book is something different. No, they actually would be looking at my sentences and be like, what the heck is she talking about? Because I was setting a promise that I was a very complicated writer when I really wasn't. So when you work too hard, it shows. And the reader can absolutely tell, like, they tried too hard and they're paying for it. They just put a bunch of scrambling stuff down, and it's actually not their real work. That's really important. So that's kind of what I have on what's in the first chapter. It's really hard, and it's probably one of the biggest obstacles you'll have when you're actually doing your first draft. Now, trust me, the whole writing process is hard, and every chapter should be its own little story. It should always be interesting, and the first chapter is the introduction, and is very, very important, which can get to people. So, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again.